Civil rights groups to Congress hold hearings on census decision to ask about citizenship. Washington voting and civil rights groups want Congress to hold hearings about the Trump administration's decision to add a question about citizenship to the 2020 census because they believe it will distort the population count and hurt communities of color. Democratic lawmakers are also crafting legislation to undo the decision, but some Republicans in Congress and state officials have said the question should be asked. Commerce Secretary Wilbur Ross announced last month that the agency would add the controversial question to the census, saying it is necessary to provide complete and accurate census block-level data. Civil rights groups also want to meet with Ross to discuss how he made the decision and what impact it could have. Congress should be stepping up to hold these hearings to elicit more information from the Secretary, said Terry Alminas, Director of Census and Voting Programs at Asian Americans Advancing Justice. We are all working together to figure out and work with Congress and try to find the answers. There is a sense of urgency, said Vanita Gupta, President and CEO of the Leadership Conference on Civil and Human Rights. The Justice Department asked census officials in December to reinstate the question, which was last asked in 1950 on the short-form census questionnaire most people receive. Justice officials said the information would help in enforcing a key provision of the 1965 Voting Rights Act designed to protect against discrimination in voting. Ross said last month that having the citizenship information will permit more effective enforcement of the Voting Rights Act. Secretary Ross determined that obtaining complete and accurate information to meet this legitimate government purpose outweighed the limited potential adverse impacts, the agency said in a statement. The decision sparked lawsuits from national civil rights groups, state attorneys general and other organizations, including the U.S. Conference of Mayors and the National Democratic Redistricting Committee. While census takers have no power to enforce immigration laws, opponents of asking about citizenship believe that having the question on the survey will lead some people to avoid being counted. The prospect of an epic undercount of African Americans and all people of color in the 2020 census is becoming more of a reality each day, said Mark Morial, president of the National Urban League and a former mayor of New Orleans. John Yang, president of Asian Americans Advancing Justice, said an accurate count is critical to communities of color. We are going to do everything that we can to ensure an accurate count, said Yang, adding that civil rights groups will work with the agency. But if necessary, that will include fighting against the Census Bureau and bad policy decisions that are being made. That includes oversight, that includes legislation, and that potentially could include litigation. Senator Brian Schatz, D. Hawaii, introduced a bill last month that would reverse Ross' decision, and Representative Grace Meng, D.N.Y., is working on a similar measure. Many immigrants who are fearful of deportation under the current administration will simply choose to not participate in the census out of fear that the information they provide will be used against them, said Meng. The Democratic measures are not likely to get much traction in the Republican-controlled Congress. Louisiana Senator John Kennedy, a Republican who serves on the Judiciary Committee, said the question is long overdue and belongs on the census. A census isn't just a simple count of every man, woman and child, Kennedy said in a statement. It delves into economics, geography and other demographics. It certainly should be able to tell the story of our nation's citizenship. Representative Clay Higgins, R-Law, called the addition of the question common sense. Americans deserve to know how many citizens versus non-citizens are residing in our country, said Higgins, a member of the Homeland Security Committee. Some Republican state officials agreed. It just makes sense that government has a more accurate record for the census, Alabama Attorney General Steve Marshall said in a recent statement. Plans for the nationwide count have been underway for years. The count, which takes place every 10 years, is used to apportion the 435 seats in the House among the states and to allocate federal aid. The citizenship question is included in the American Community Survey, a large sample poll conducted annually to provide updated demographic information. But it has not been on the short form that most people have received in the decennial census since 1950. Morial said congressional hearings should examine the methods used to develop the citizenship question. He also complained about the agency's decision to continue to count prisoners in facilities where they are housed, often white rural areas instead of communities where they lived before they were convicted. A disproportionate number of inmates are people of color and from urban centers. Hearings by Congress to delve into these issues are part of Congress' responsibility, Morial said.